My name is Lisa Hemming, and I'm the Director of Academic Programs for your Alumni Association, and welcome back to campus. We're excited today for our seminar, Sustainability in the Wine Industry. And we're lucky here to have an expert in John Bargetto on the topic. He's from Bartetta Winery out in California. John is an '88 M.B.A. graduate from Notre Dame and a UC Davis grad from 1984. He's back on campus for reunion and was gracious to agree to present today. So actually, when I called John, I said, "Hey, John, are you coming back for reunion?" And he's like, "Not sure," but I said, "Hey, would you do this talk?" He's like, "I'll be there, no problem." So we actually worked together to ship his wine from California, and unbeknownst to me, you can't ship wine via UPS to the state of Indiana. So we have a friend in Niles that owns a Jimmy John's. So they took the whole shipment, so it was great. So just to get back to a little bit about Bargetto Winery, it represents the oldest continuous operation winery in the Santa Cruz Mountains and practices sustainable wine growing and the practice of sustainable winery in the winery itself. They've upgraded the winery and implemented procedures that impact the environment the least. And John is here today to share his insights. So welcome, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Microphone working okay? Well, you know, us old domers, we always have lots of stories, so I'll try not to do too many tangents. But when I was in school here, of course, we were over Hayes Healy, you know, much smaller building. And when they built Mendoza, I remember coming by here for the first time and seeing this Jordan Hall. And I said, wow, I wonder if I'd ever do anything significant enough to have a chance to speak, you know? And I have to tell you, I was really surprised and pleased the day that Lisa called me and said, John, would you talk about something, sustainability? And it's something we really believe in our winery and our vineyard. So I have to tell you, Lisa, I'm honored to be here to share a few of my thoughts with you. I'd like to continue by thanking Lisa. She really made my life very easy. She organized the whole thing. I sent her a bunch of pictures. She put them in. And I said, I can't really do a PowerPoint. That's not my skill set. My kids are good at that, but I can push a button. So when the time comes, you hand me the thing, and we'll push the button. I have to kid you all a little bit. I really admire your deep devotion to sustainability. In wine growing, I think it's great, all right? And I know it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that there's 12 cases of wine out there waiting for you. And even if there was no wine promise, you'd still be here, right? And I kind of like the Notre Dame balance. It's a short talk, 25, 30 minutes, and an hour of wine tasting, and then mass after that. And I hope you don't have problems with abuse of wine, but there are some Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. But we believe in wine in moderation, so hopefully you can respect that. Before we get into it, I thought I would share a little bit about my experience coming from a little town, SoCal. As Lisa said, I was here just for 2 years or 2 winters. Many of you were here for probably 4 or 6 winters or more. And whenever you come to Notre Dame, it's always a special time, right? Because it's such a unique and wonderful place. I'd like to think that when I was here was a little bit of a golden age, okay? Because Father Hesburgh was retiring in 1987, and so there was tremendous national attention and international attention on the university. So that was wonderful. There was a guy named Timmy Brown. You might have heard of him. He got something called a Heisman that year. And Lou Holtz was the coach. And, of course, this is honest. I showed up on campus. I had no idea who Tim Brown was. I had no idea who Lou Holtz was. But I learned to love college football and have not missed a game in 27 years, like many of you. I wanted to recognize a couple people who are here. I'm not the only winemaker in the group. But before we get to the winemakers, I have a dear friend of mine, Gavin Trip, who's from Santa Cruz, California, who has joined me on this trip, and we've had a great time. It's his first time to come and see our beloved campus, so it's always special to see the campus through someone else's eyes. So Gavin, thank you again. One of my wine-growing friends, Louis Lucas, is here as well. There he is hiding. He promised me he's going to try to heckle through most of the lecture. So far he's been pretty good. Marty Meeker is a wine grower in the Paso Robles area. Where'd you go, Marty? Oh, right there. Okay. Oh, you're all lined up here. Perfect. And this gentleman I just met is from Alexander Valley. His name is Gordon, and he's a grower of Cabernet. So throw out some tough questions, and if I can't answer them, I'll be happy to punt. I will get to sustainability, I promise, but I wanted to mention a couple favorite professors, and maybe you happen to have them. One is a guy named John Houck. He was the guy who taught business ethics to us. It was called GBS in the business school, and he had a very unique approach. He used art, he used film, he was a real character. In the old days, he used to smoke a cigar in the classroom, okay, before our time, and he was wonderful. And he would use stories like of Atticus Finch of To Kill a Mockingbird, as a teaching lesson. And I saw that was part of the program as well. So some of these same themes continue to come back. And Patrick Murphy was a marketing professor, and I did some research in business ethics with him, and really very much enjoyed that. It seems to me that as Catholics, we recognize that there is someone, a force much greater than us, and it's a good thing. This university of ours that we all love has always taught us through the decades about the importance of service and serving someone, something, some organization beyond ourselves. And I think that's important. I think that links to sustainability. I think we have a sense that whether you're a wine grower or not, that we have a responsibility to be a good steward of the land. We inherit the land. We don't own it forever. It was created by someone other than us, obviously. And we have a duty to take care of the land and the water and the ozone and everything. So in preparing for this talk, I was thinking about that. And it's also the realization that in modern age, we don't only participate in nature and enjoy it, but we have an opportunity to influence it in a good way or a bad way. And I don't know about you folks, but that makes me a little nervous, And we talk about global warming, and I don't know where you fall on that, but more and more scientists are believing that humanity is influencing our weather, is influencing the planet. And so I think we have to be very cognizant of that. When it comes to wine growing sustainability, and as Lisa said, we've been around for 80 years in SoCal, but my family's been in the California wine business for over 100 years. Bargetto Winery has been a charter member of the California Wine Institute. And starting about 10 years ago, the Wine Institute took up a lead to develop a code of sustainable practices. And so we've been part of that group. And when we define sustainability in wine growing, it's a combination of 3 E's. Environmentally sound, something that's good for nature, okay? Economically feasible, it's got to make sense for the farmer, not just for one day. Might be an investment, but it's got to make business sense as well. Otherwise, a lot of farmers won't do it. And then it needs to be socially equitable, a sense of fairness to the employees, fairness to neighbors, fairness to the community. So those are the 3 E's that we look on. And where those come together, we consider us to be having sustainable practices. So that's sort of the framework. Let's see if I forget anything. What's that? Oh, good. Okay. So when Lisa asked me to talk about this, I thought we would show a combination of specific practices that we're doing in the winery, in the vineyard. And maybe yourselves, you can be thinking about which of those E's it sort of touches on, environmental, economic, or equity. Green, right?
There you go.
Wine is grown all over the world. That was one of the things that really interested me and drew me to want to continue my education. And so, of course, you'll find wine in South America. You'll find it in South Africa. You'll find it in Europe, as you know. In China, it's planting like crazy. So our little neck of the woods is a place called the Santa Cruz Mountains. It's an appellation that's south of San Francisco and north of Monterey. It's a vast mountain range that overlooks the Monterey Bay. It's not super high in elevation. Our highest point is about 600 feet. So this is our estate vineyard. It's named in honor of my mother, and it's about 40 acres planted. It's fall time. You can see how it's fall time with the color of the leaves. So we start in our practices. The major use of electricity for the winery is our cooling system. So cooling system is used to keep the wines cool during fermentation and then to cold stabilize. A big draw on electricity. So we finally got around to saying, you know, if we insulate these pipes with neoprene, we can conserve energy. Just makes sense, right? Relatively simple practice, and we got it done. Ironically, Gavin and I were walking around the campus, and we went into St. Joe Hall. And I was reminding them how some of the rooms were super cold in the old days over there. And the guy was telling me that they just recently had wrapped the pipes to try to, conserve energy. So we use boxes for our wine bottles naturally, and we've shifted years ago to using cardboard that's 45% recycled. That's good. Skylights, we're continuing to add skylights throughout our cellar. Talk about something that's relatively easy, makes sense, free lighting. You don't have to pay for electricity. In fact, we have some of these skylights that are so big in the cellar that we have cellar workers that don't have to even turn on the lights to work there. So they can have the skylights if it's a sunny day, and there it is, free lighting. An indoor forklift. For years we had propane forklifts, and propane burns pretty clean, but there is an exhaust, and it would bother our employees. So when they're working inside, we thought it would make sense for their better working environment to have a electric forklift. Recycling, I used to think in the old days, my grandparents and all of your grandparents, they probably just recycled things just because they came out of the Depression era. They didn't want to waste. They didn't have a lot of money. These days, we have so much, and we tend to be wasteful. So it takes a little more effort maybe to recycle because we're not always thinking about it. So at the winery, the last 10 years, we've really focused on recycling cardboard boxes. All of our metal gets recycled, and all of our plastic too. In addition to being recycled, it goes to a group called Gray Bears that help elderly people. So I feel like we're doing two goods with one. Gray Bears. Have you heard of that group? Yeah. Giving back to the community has always been part of our tradition there, but when we introduced this high-end Italian blend called La Vita, it's one of our special wines that we have there from the estate, I thought it would be good to kind of formally pick a nonprofit each year that we would commit to giving a certain amount of money. Each year the label changes, and so we have tomorrow, we're having our La Vita release party. I'm flying back early tomorrow morning with Gavin so I can be there for that. So that's one of my favorite days of the year. A little Notre Dame connection, if you don't mind. And my godfather, his name is Jack Regan, same as the vineyard. His first cousin was Kevin O'Shea, who was a basketball great here in the 1940s to early 50s. Does anybody in this audience have ever heard of the name Kevin O'Shea? Just one person? Oh, we got one over there. Thank you. I was going to ask someone to lie, please. Okay. I did notice in the Hesburgh Library that they've converted from all the old-fashioned fluorescent lights and incandescent lights. Those things use a lot of electricity. And now we've converted the whole winery to these more modern right lights program, use a lot less electricity, give a better quality light. All good. Recycling glass, it kind of comes in two forms. Sometimes the bottles themselves, in the old days, what we'd do, we throw a wine bottle in the garbage and would end up in the landfill. Not really sustainable. These days, we recycle the bottles. They either get melted down and reblown into a new wine glass, or in some cases, companies will clean them, remove the label, and use the same glass again. Just speaking of recycling. So Gavin and I were in a restaurant yesterday in South Bend, right across the street, in fact. And when you grow up recycling, and once you get committed to doing it, the idea of taking an empty bottle and just putting it into a general garbage can, it just like rubs you, And so we were there, and I turned to my local friend, I said, is there a recycle? He says, John, we don't do that much recycling here. I said, well, I know there are some containers out on the street that I've noticed, but this particular restaurant did not. So I don't know if it got recycled downstream or something, but maybe a little area for improvement in case they're not doing it. I'm not sure. Biodiesel, this is something we started about 10 years ago, both at the winery and the vineyard. It's a cool thing whereby they take restaurant fat waste from all the regional restaurants, and they combine that with excessive vegetable waste from farms and whatever, and they convert it into a diesel product that gets blended with standard diesel. So it's not 100% bio. It's an 80-20 blend. But therefore, we're using a little less diesel that comes from, the Middle East or wherever. Just in a small, some of these are small things, but I think they can make a difference, just in a small way, diminishing our dependency on foreign oil is the way I think about it. Not everything has to be, huge. We do a little bit of promotion, so the back of our labels, we put sustainably grown and please recycle, our way of encouraging other people to do that. Pumice, so we create a lot of pumice, is the pressed matter after the fermentation or before. Instead of wasting it, again, we've created this kind of win-win situation. There is a grower up the road, he grows flowers, he needs fertilizer, we need to get rid of it. So we go and deliver our pumice to him, and it gets used for something good. In the old days, I don't know about the university, but we used to use a lot of styrofoam. Styrofoam, you take styrofoam, you put it in landfill, you come back a million years later, still there, not really sustainable, not good. It's, and it's made out of a petroleum product, right? So we've converted to these biodegradable type products that this will break down in the soil or could be reused. So now we'll shift to the vineyard. I'll give you 12 examples, and we try to tie each of these to a month of the year and what we're doing in the vineyard. So in this case, with 40 acres, I calculated one day that we have about 1 million pruning cuts. All right? And the danger with that is there's airborne diseases, in this case eutypa in our region, that can kill the vines and create a non-sustainable situation, right? And it's a serious threat. And there are some compounds that you can use. There's some chemicals. In the past we used to. But instead we decided that we're going to just paint each wound with a water-based latex paint, pretty innocuous product. And so now we've been doing this for 20 years. And so it provides labor, it provides protection for the vine. Anyone guess who that little fella is in there? You can give him a name. How about Alfred? Is that a clue? Yeah. So some of these other vineyard owners can tell you what their number one pest is. But it's not deer. Once in a while, deer causes problems. It's not rabbits, really. It's gophers. You guys know what gophers are? Bill Murray and the golf course, all that, So gophers are the bane of our existence, and we spend so much time trying to control their population. just so you know, gophers can eat the whole root system of a vine. It could be a 20-year-old vine, and you walk by and it's productive and healthy. Next week you walk by and it's gone. It's dead. It's hard to replant and reestablish. So we set up 2 of these barn owl boxes, and the guy told me, you build it and they will come. That's what he said. I said, wow. And the idea is gophers are active at nighttime. They're a bit nocturnal themselves, and sometimes they're on top of the ground. Owls are active at nighttime as well. So we put 2 of these in, and he said sometimes you have to wait about 6 months. And sure enough, almost to the day, 6 months later, owls located themselves inside our free housing. And so I'm not going to claim that they eat all the gophers. I'm not going to claim that they totally control the population, but they do their bit. We still have to use little traps. But that's biological control of gophers. Solar electricity. So this is a fun one. We were really the first that I know in our region to install solar electricity in a vineyard. And I looked at the numbers, talk about sustainability investment. It took about 7 years for it to pay for itself. I would have done it if it took 25. My idea, vineyard, a lot of sunlight in California, in Santa Cruz. You got light coming from the heavens, well, from the sun, right? Striking these panels, going into DC current, it gets converted into AC current, and we're tied into the PG&E grid, which is our electrical regional provider. We irrigate in the morning when electricity rates are very low, and we sell them electricity, particularly in the afternoon, all day long whenever we can. And they pay us 4 times the rate in the afternoon that we use in the morning. So I said, let's get this straight. They're going to, per unit, they're going to pay me 4 times in the afternoon because that's when PG&E needs electricity because of air conditioning and everything else. So that is kind of a fun thing. It's a 7-year payout. Cover crops. My friend Gavin reminded me to add one more, so I had 3. But there's sort of 4 aspects of cover crops, and I don't know, Louis or Gordon, maybe they can add another one. But in my mind, it starts with organic matter. So we're adding organic matter back into the soil, okay, when the plant dies and goes on and then before it grows up again. And organic matter is good for the soil, for water penetration and health of the soil. This is crimson clover, and crimson clover fixes nitrogen, which is an expression meaning it takes nitrogen out of the air and puts it in the roots and therefore into the soil. Okay? And then it adds beauty to the vineyard, which is good for workers. The vineyard owner likes that. Visitors like that, and just makes for a more enjoyable experience. I can think about all the beauty that these priests have designed and leaders have designed for this beautiful campus we have here. And finally, plants like these provide a home for sort of natural insects, ladybugs and other little bugs that can be kind of, again, biological control to some of our other little pests, little mites and mealy bugs or something that causes problems in our vineyard. So I can think of 4 good aspects. And we're going to get to that one. Erosion control as well in the field, and then we'll get on the hillside. But that would be true too. Marty, you want to throw in one more? We're up to 5. That's pretty good. Okay, compost. This is something a little bit new for us. I'm really focused on the idea of healthy soils for healthy vines for better wine. And in modern thinking, some people might just think there's just dirt, but there's live dirt and there's dead dirt. And the idea with live dirt is there's microorganisms alive in the soil that bring health to the soil. And so now we've started putting out truckloads of compost. This is Jesus Figueroa, a very hard-working foreman. I have to mention his name because without him, we wouldn't have a vineyard. But this is mushroom compost that we're putting out. Lisa, how are we doing on time? We're okay? We're okay? A couple more minutes? Okay, so then we do some canopy management. So we go through and remove shoots here. And the idea is you could spray every day of the year because we have to control some disease like botrytis. You can spray every day. Or you can go through and open up the canopy and get more sunlight on the fruit for better flavor, better color development in the reds. but also for disease control. So this is manual work, it's hard work, but by doing this, we lessen the amount of spray we have to do, and we create a higher quality wine. We're back to biodiesel for our tractor here. And then crop thinning, so sometimes nature is generous, not every year, but some years it is. But these are the Italian varieties that go into our La Vita wine. So to avoid being greedy and also to try to produce the best wine we can, we end up putting about 75% of the crop on the ground. And so the crop that remains is more certain to get ripe, more flavorful, and we believe we make a better product. Water, I don't know about out here because you guys get rain all the time, but water in California is a major issue and is becoming a bigger issue all the time. In my county, our county of Santa Cruz, it's one of the biggest. In fact, there's a huge discussion about installing a desalination plant, okay, where we take salt water, bring it in, convert it, with tremendous electricity needs to do that, to create water that we can consume. So we're trying to do our part. Drip irrigation, we try to get the irrigation water right to the root zone of the plants, okay? In the old days in California, we went back 40, 50 years ago, a lot of sprinklers that put water basically everywhere besides where it needs to go. And now and this has been around for decades now, this drip irrigation from Israel, but we're trying to use deficit irrigation, just the amount of water we need to bring the crop to fruition. Hand harvesting of grapes, again, provides labor and goes to quality. And this is something, sorry about me in the picture, I wasn't supposed to be in that one. There was another one without me, but that's probably what got there. So this is something we learned from our European friends. We're in a very cool climate in Santa Cruz, and some years we have a hard time getting some of the grapes ripe. So I decided to do a little experiment. Rocks were around, we're not really wasting any resources, and decided to collect them right under the fruit zone. In these cases, these vines are trained very low to the ground, just 24 inches off. And now we have these sort of warmers. During the day, the sun shines, the rocks collect heat, and then into the evening time provide a little heat back to the plant and encourage ripening. And you might say, does it really make a difference? Well, if it's just one day, probably wouldn't make a difference. But over a whole growing season, collectively, and I'll let you know next time I talk to you because it's new. But I'm pretty confident it's going to do something. Plus the Gophers can't bother us there. And then back to Gordon's point, erosion control. So now we're on a little hillside here. And in the wintertime, if we didn't have these grasses planted and we get heavy El Nino rains, you lose topsoil. And the loss of topsoil is not a good idea. That's not a sustainable situation. So we've started doing much more planting of that. And that may be about it. Oh yeah, Lisa really twisted my arm now. No, she didn't. But I thought it would be fun. It's part of our 80th anniversary. I don't get back here very often. And in case any of you are wine lovers, I don't think there's any wine lovers in the audience. Probably not. I was going to extend to you just a fun little deal that if anyone orders wine on our website, and by the way, if you want to learn more about sustainability, all those pictures and a little more expanded info is at our website. So you can go there and look, bargetto.com. But just for fun, for the next week, if you go online, order wine, you type in Go Irish, don't you? Yeah, here it is. Type in Go Irish, and you'll get a 20% discount, and they can ship to you. And even in Indiana, you can get it, but it just takes a little longer, like 6 weeks. It's the slow covered wagon. But it will get here.
And then you want to talk a little about our 3 wines that we're tasting today?
Oh, I think they're tired of me. But I'll say a couple words. So there's 3 wines out there waiting for you, all from the estate. The first is, and I know there's some notes on a sheet for you. The first is the 2010 Santa Cruz County Chardonnay. It's showing our retro label in honor of our anniversary. It's a label that my grandfather used back in the 1940s. So I think it kind of captures the nice fruit coming from the cool climate of Santa Cruz Mountains. Then we have a Pinot Noir And our region is best known for Pinot Noir. Okay, Alexander Valley, known well for Cabernet and other things. Certainly Napa Valley, known for Cabernet. Paso Robles, where Mr. Meeker comes from. Great Zin down there, and Merlot. And Louis got all sorts of Italian varieties. I've been buying Pinot Grigio and Dolcetto from him. But our region, cool climate, Pinot Noir. So the 2010 was a very good vintage. You'll have that. And then the third wine in that order, I would suggest, would be the retro label Santa Cruz Mountain Merlot. So it's going to be more robust wine. Now it's aged for 3 years, so there's some nice soft tannins, but I think you can enjoy the nice deep color of that Merlot wine. So I think they all three kind of represent the distinctiveness of our region. Do we have time for questions, or did I go on so long? Huh? Are there any questions, or people just want to get to the wine tasting?
Just a quick one. So it seems like you're saving a lot of electricity, saving money potentially on fertilizer, pesticides, water maybe. Have you done any calculations of how much you're saving every year, or what the payback is on all of the sustainability initiatives collectively?
Good question. I wish I had time. If I had a staff, I could do that. The one where I really zeroed in was the solar electricity, because it was an investment. I really kind of wanted to know that one. So 7 years is a pretty tight estimate. Some things we can't measure. A lot of things in life we can't measure. So the idea of compost. Okay, so I'm spending money, spending labor to do it, and it's one of the hardest work projects that the men do out there. And so I know we're doing good, but I can't always link exactly how much. From experience, we're spending time with that shoot thinning. Okay, that's only the first step. Then we have to come back to that same section and do leaf pulling to expose the clusters even more. From experience, we know that if we don't do both of those practices, disaster strikes. Disease comes in, mildew, the grapes don't ripen, the grapes develop a green flavor, and I would say that would happen every time. So those things are compulsory. Yeah. So it's kind of a do or die thing. We can't make quality wines, and we'll be out of business. If some of these practices, if we don't do it, we won't have good wine, and we'll never make it to our 85th anniversary.
Probably not germane in your area, but what is ice wine? I'm from northern Michigan.
Right.
Very
Right.
expensive. I don't know.
Yeah, it's expensive. So everyone heard the question about ice wines. It's kind of a European tradition. They make wonderful ones in Canada and Michigan as well. Cold climate. It would be very difficult for us to make ice wine where I come from. And the idea is you let the grape clusters hang out there late into the vintage and beyond, and you wait for the cold to show up and the ice. And the ice will freeze the water, because a berry of grape has lots of water in it. So you'll freeze it, and then you pick at that time, and then you quickly press it. And so now we've taken maybe 22% sugar, and maybe we've taken it up to 35 or 40. Okay, so we're starting with a much sweeter grape juice, and now we're going to make a dessert-style wine. Okay, so we've lost a lot of our product because it's gone to ice and it's gone. So that's why they're going to charge more for that. Yeah. Oh, of cork. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So kind of two aspects of your question. One is the sustainability part, and then the taste part. Cork in wine bottles come from cork trees, mainly in Spain and Portugal, and I think Sardinia or something. And when they take the cork off, it's just the bark. They don't kill the tree. So I consider that to be very sustainable, a cork. It's natural, and if you put it in the ground, it's going to sort of break down. The plastic, and you can kind of make your own judgment. So then we have some plastic corks that are used too, probably a petroleum base or indirectly. So I don't know if I consider that to be quite as sustainable. We have used some of those in the past. that kind of pertains to your second part for taste. And any winemaker, Louis had this experience, Mr. Meeker and Gordon, you grow the grapes, you make the wine, and you put a natural product in it. And maybe 5% of the time, that cork finish ruins the bottle of wine, and it breaks your heart. Okay, so then as a business owner, you say, well, what are the options? Well, we can go to this plastic thing, okay, because you're not going to get a corked bottle, right? Or you can go to screw cap. And in the case of some of our mid-tier wines, we've shifted to screw cap because we don't have the risk now of a fouled bottle, and it's also very convenient for the consumer. And so we're using a combination right now of screw cap and cork. So sometimes for flavor concerns, but I still believe the cork is sustainable. Oh, right.
Are there covers for those?
Yeah. We're in a pretty cool climate, and they're double coned. So no serious heat comes in. Yes. Yeah, good question. If it was a sort of closed box or something and we didn't have any airflow in the cellar, it could get hot. And our roofs are high too, so that kind of helps with that. One more? Oh, I can absolutely recommend one winery. Yeah, you want to be conscientious? Absolutely. Oh, Bargetto Winery. I would suggest that. That's very easy. But now you have 3 other choices here too. Yes. As far as the organization, so the Wine Institute is an 80-year-old trade organization that represents the wine industry worldwide, if you will. They're based in San Francisco. And there are wineries that participate in the sustainable practice. The last number I saw, it represented about 68% of the planted acres in California. So it was about 2/3. And they're not the only group. There's also other groups that have their own sustainable practices. There's one, Lodi Rules and Napa Green. But the Wine Institute one is a significant one.
So thank you, John, for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.